The restaurants you love, the food you crave, and the people that make it all happen. We tell their stories on the Paper Trails podcast with Albemarle Paper Supply.
What's going on, guys? How are you? Welcome back to the Paper Trails podcast. I'm Nick Howger, Nitro's host, and excited to have you guys on. And we are at the Crunkleton, and this is Elizabeth area?
Yeah.
Plaza Midwood?
Yeah,
what do we consider it?
Definitely Elizabeth. We're nestled between Myers Park and Plaza Midwood.
Gotcha. So, super pumped to be here, and we have a couple of guests. We have Ryan Hart and Chef Greg Balch, and so super pumped to have these guys here to chat. They run the Crunkleton, right back of the house, kind of front of the house bar.
Bar manager and executive chef.
And so, and then we also have some other projects that we'll talk about. Cheesesteaks
parlor, yeah.
So definitely want to ask about that, the cheats part. But
awesome.
Guys, welcome on the show. Appreciate you coming out and coming and filming with us. And so maybe first let's talk a little bit background. How did you guys get in the food industry? Is it you always knew you wanted to get into it? Was it how did that even pan out?
Absolutely.
Ryan, why don't you start?
Well, first of all, thanks for having us. We really appreciate it. This is actually my first podcast.
Okay.
Mine as well.
Yeah. The immediacy of it's kind of interesting, right? We're rolling, baby.
Boom.
Anyways, for me personally, I went to college at ECU.
Okay.
Like most people that go to school at ECU, it did not go exceptional. And my extremely loving family, kind of bailed me out, and my cousin David actually was going to school at Johnson & Wales with Greg.
With me.
Okay.
And opened up his apartment, was like, I got an extra room, come stay with me, and he got me a job at the Charlotte City Club.
Okay.
So at 21, walking through the doors of the City Club, everybody's in, the penguin suits, that pretty much a tux without the jacket, and I don't know how it is today, but back then it was like a who's who of Charlotte, and I went from eating Bojangles and Domino's pizza pretty much every other day to going to these wine dinners, and there was all these kids from well-to-do families that knew how to drink and cook, and so my whole world exploded when I moved to Charlotte. I moved to a bigger city, but then
what year is that?
That's 2006, summer of 2006.
Pre a lot of the growth that Charlotte's had, right?
Yeah, and that was
tumbleweeds.
Yeah, that was honestly something I kind of noticed starting at the City Club was, there was not every niche had been filled. Charlotte was ripe for kind of the picking, and over the last 15 years we've seen kind of that growth.
Major growth.
Oh yeah, it's insane. Southend used to be where you go pick up your car when it got towed.
Yeah.
It was not like the hot poppin'.
Now it's definitely not that.
No.
Yeah, not at all. And so I kind of got cut my teeth in the industry, starting in fine dining. I remember back waiting, polishing silverware, and just kind of being the little hoss that would bring all the food to and from the dining rooms, and I worked a ton of banquets. And
was that your first food job or no?
No, I think every kid starts off
busting tables.
Some ice cream shop or some sandwich shop.
But for me, it was Char Grill when I was 15 up in Raleigh, and honestly, we'll get to that later, but had a big influence kind of on what we're doing with Cheats.
Nice.
Our
first fine dining experience.
Yeah, it was coming from the land.
So you're the Char Grill that was uptown or downtown?
Six Forks.
Okay.
Or Strickland.
Okay.
Yeah. I did that, and I worked at a deli too, which also had a big influence. Boondini's in Raleigh, shout out if it's rest in peace. It's closed 2 years ago, but yeah, once you kind of break into the real kind of sit down fine dining wet linen tablecloth, I realized that there was a lot of professionals, working at a burger joint, a deli, you weren't really surrounded by people that we would call hospitality professionals. We were kind of just there to keep the wheels greased. But yeah, the City Club was awesome. I got to meet all kinds of famous actors and politicians. I remember I brought Bob Dole some popcorn, and he looked at me and he was like, "Son, this is the best popcorn I've ever had." And I'm just like, "Holy crap, it's Bob Dole!" It was a really. Obama came through. He did he did a continental breakfast. I'll never forget it. Continental, which means no eggs, right? Is that right?
Yeah, it's
just bagels
muffins
and coffee.
stuff. Yeah.
And it was $35,000 a plate. And you got his book. It was a fundraising thing. $35,000 a plate. Crazy, right?
Somebody raised some money.
Yeah.
I'll say.
All 12 people enjoyed it.
But yeah, and then I did so my cousin actually got promoted to be a manager there. We lived together, and it was just too much. And so I left for an illustrious high-end fine dining seafood joint called Blackfin, or so I thought. From the outside, it looked like it was going to be in the brand and everything else. And so I was very surprised on the first day of training when we went over the food menu, and it was like burgers and fries, and I was like, what have I done? What have I done? So that kind of started an illustrious tour of the epicenter, and I can honestly say, especially now that I think the news came out the other day, that it's being completely demolished.
Oh, is it?
Or I don't know, it's like 90% vacant, and they've defaulted on their loan and everything else. But you know, starting there, and I want to say it was like 08, 09, like right when it was opening up. It was the hottest place on the planet, I feel like. And so it was a fun place to spend your mid-20s, you know what I mean? But yeah, my first real bartending job was at Enso, the sushi spot, and then I got recruited over at Mortimer's, and that was really where I learned to bartend. There was a gentleman named Stephen Wilfong there that he had just moved from New York City and kind of brought this like crazy, like over-the-top personality, as well as a little bit of like flair bartending to the game for me, and kind of really taught me the, you know, engagement. Yeah, well, just like the engagement side. You know, like anybody can make drinks. You know, it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't even matter if they're well made or not, if you're really engaged with the bartender. And I can definitely say, prior to ever really getting any serious bar training, that was the thing that kept a lot of bars in Charlotte rolling, was, you know, just having bartenders that
having a buddy back there you can talk to.
What's the biggest thing that you learned from Steve? Was that engagement part?
Yeah, and you know, the idea of the kind of New York buyback, you know, like if somebody's sitting there having, you know, 4 or 5 Bud Lights, you know, throw one on the comp tab, you know, like, hey man, this one's on me, you know, thank you so much for coming in. And you know, it's very much the hospitality industry is very much a game of, you know, give and take, really like any relationship. But that was probably the biggest thing. I mean, God, he was so funny. I feel like I'm an A-type personality, I suppose, and when I'd get around him and bartend, I'd be like a C or a D. He was so smart, it would just like crush you. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't even think quick enough to, like, you know, reply to some of his funny jokes and stuff. So that was pretty wild. I also got to work with Bob Peters, who's a very well-known bartender in the city there, and, you know, talk about that guy would be like slap a 20 on his forehead. I never really understood what that was, but it used to drive people nuts, and he'd keep that 20, you know. But he could like take a Bud Light and flip it through the air and stall it on his hand and like fly it over to guests. I mean, just like the showmanship side of it, and because when you're, you know, you always hear like it's kind of a generic hospitality statement, but like, you know, we're all on stage, you know, we're actors and actresses on a stage. Like, actually, that was from the City Club step card, but it's, you know, it's true. Like you are putting on, you know, somewhat of a performance, and you know, hopefully, especially now as manager, we try and find people that it comes from an altruistic, like natural place. It's not fake, you know. We've all had that waitress or bartender. It's like, oh, hey guys, how we doing today?
With our 37 pieces of flair.
Yeah. The TGI Fridays. Rock and Roll Cafe.
Oh gosh.
Come on now.
But just to piggyback on that, Ryan, that I think that anybody watching this can take is the relationship piece of any industry.
Oh yeah.
You know, my youngest brother just graduated college this past May. And, you know, listen, there's probably some great things you can learn from college, but my thoughts and my suggestions, tips were headed to him were meet everybody, create good relationships, don't burn bridges, get to know your professors, know your classmates. They're all going to go in different locations and different businesses, industries. Like, you need to know these connections, get their numbers, because you never know where these relationships may lead.
Or who people will be, you know, and I think that's
in 5 or 10 years.
Extremely true. I mean,
that's a young man's kind of biggest, you know, failure sometimes is not, you know, burning, like you said, burning bridges and, you know, not thinking long term. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen some people, like I knew Greg in college, you know, and I'll never forget. And I tell this story to the guests all the time, but you know, I'll never forget. He messaged me on Facebook. It was like, "Oh man, I heard you're coming to the Crunkleton." This is kind of before I was like at another restaurant, and I was like really felt super loyal to it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I don't know, keep that on the low," you know. And I'm like, "You're working there? They got you, party animal, this degenerate." But what I didn't know was that over the last 15 years, you know, Greg has just been, you know, learning from all these different cuisines and really honing his craft. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt that, like, you know, I think the bar program here is excellent. But we wouldn't be where we're at if it wasn't for the incredible food that we're able to. Oh man. I mean, starting from that humble menu with them weird sugar toads, to where we're at now.
I chased the sugar toads like this year, trying to bring them back just for, you know, by popular demand. And they didn't swim this way this year.
Well, I'll tell you what, you know, the restaurant I was at prior, there was so many touches and there was so much kind of avant-garde and so much explanation required. That coming here and I'm looking at our burger and it's got a piece of American cheese on it. I'm like, really, dude? Like Kraft singles?
Kraft singles, though, but it's got to be Kraft singles.
Yeah. And I'm like, you couldn't do some like aged cheddar or smoked something or, you know, whatever. Yeah. And he's like, man, he's like, F that. He's like, there's not a better cheese for a burger. And I have to agree with him. You know, it's just the meltiness, the creaminess. So again, like kind of juxtaposing that super avant-garde style chef to kind of coming in here and working with him who care less about using some esoteric ingredient, but really like, is it going to be delicious? Is it well seasoned? Is it prepared the same way every time? You know, and then because of the kind of openness of this place, you know, we're one big room. You know, I see Greg at tables constantly, and it's not, you know, only going to talk to the other big exec chefs that come in, or like if it's South Park Magazine or whatever, it's everyone, you know. And
I love that.
I mean, we had a guest, you know, that had like, she has like a little card that she brings in that basically says, I can't eat pretty much anything on the planet.
I had one come in last night. She was like, I'm bringing my husband here. Yeah. And she was like, here's his card. I was like, well, bring him in. And I was like, I got him.
But Greg made a custom dish for her, and when he brought it to her, like, she literally started crying.
I love that.
Yeah, she can eat about 7 or 8 things on planet Earth. Like, she literally, I mean, it's like avocados, carrots, leafy greens, lemon,
rabbit food.
I mean, it's next to nothing. But we made like all these carrot curls. I mean, it was just a beautiful dish. But it's like, here you go. And I mean, she's come back. I mean, like, got up, gave me a hug, started crying. It was awesome.
And like you said, getting back to the relationship side of things, you know, it's taking care of the people that are taking care of your business. You know, it's always over leveraging. You know what I mean? Like, you hear the term growing up, give 110%. Yeah. And to most people, I think that just means like, oh, try really hard. Yeah. But it's about that, like, okay, do what's expected, which is the 100%. Yeah. And then do like a bunch of other shit too that isn't expected of you and that you might not be getting paid for, that, you know, might be outside of your comfort zone. But when you over leverage like that, you always see like massive returns.
Yeah, you always win.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk's, you know, the biggest proprietor of that. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. I mean, when I lived with David, he was the wine guy, and we'd watch his little wine blogs, and he's like the craziest guy. Like, let's give it a sniffy sniff, you know. And yeah, dude, he was the best, man. I remember him like one time. He's like, I don't even know what you are. You're just a little slut wine. I'll never forget. It was just the funniest. He was the funniest wine reviewer I've ever seen in my life.
My gosh.
But now, like, you know, that he's on like the entrepreneurial side, he does talk about. He tells a really great story about how there was this gentleman that was a big like Bills fan or something, and got a signed jersey and sent it to him. Was like, you know, thank you for your business. And And he didn't get anything directly from him, but the guy went around and told everyone, like, this is the most incredible business that I've ever worked with. They sent me this thing, I didn't even really deserve it.
Yeah.
And then somebody else called and ordered like, you know, $10,000 worth of, you know, Chateau Montelaine or whatever. And he tells that story all the time. And I think that's just so indicative of like what we do, but you know, maybe not a Bills jersey or whatever, but like sending out that plate that's off the menu, or you know, making vegan mayonnaise.
Yeah,
or whatever
somebody comes in like, you vegan haze? I'm like, sure, we do.
He's like, let me go blend up some peanuts, and you know, and he figured it out. He'd never done it before.
Some agua fava, and there you go.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember when I was at Mortimer's, the first time I ever had that kind of experience, this guy came in and asked for, I'll take a vodka and diet Sprite. And, you know, immediately your eyes roll in the back of your head. You're like, come on, man, like, what bar has diet Sprite? You know what I mean? But thankfully there's a CVS in the epicenter, and I was like, yeah, just give me 1 second, without hesitation. I ran over there, got a diet Sprite, came back and made it for him. And
love that.
He's like, is that a bottle of diet Sprite? I was like, yeah. He said, where'd you get that? He's like, it's not on the gun. I was like, no, it's not on the gun. I just ran over to CVS to, you know, get this for you. And that guy's face, you know, was just so like blown away. And I just think that, you know, it cost me what, like $1.50 or whatever to get that. And that guy,
but that huge gratification, that immediate gratification that you get,
and it made me feel great. Yeah, it made me feel great too. But you know, that guy came back, you know, almost every other day until I left that bar. You know, and I don't know. I just think that the people that show up to work and it's very transactional, like they never kind of really see the magic and the beauty of what this industry can bring to the table. And you know, the people that really are the lifers, it's such a horrible term, right?
I know.
For service industry. I'll never forget, there was this guy named Michael Moriarty, rest in peace. And he used to give me the hardest time at the Charlotte Steak. He was like from New York. And I called him a lifer one time. I was like, whatever, you're a lifer, you're gonna, you know. And he looked at me, he's like, oh, you. He's like, you got it written all over you. He's like, you're gonna be a lifer too. And I'm like at 22 or whatever, thinking like, I'm gonna get out of this industry. I'm gonna go back to school. And and
right.
Here I am, 37.
Yeah.
You know, I've opened 12 restaurants and opening one of my own for the first time, you know, towards the end of the year. And yeah.
Yep, love it, man. You know, a lot of good stuff you said there. I mean, you know, about, you know, and maybe Gary Vee that says this, but you know, doing the right thing is always the right thing. You know, and you know, just under promise and over deliver every single time, and you will keep those customers coming back and back. I mean, I think of my dad. You know, we have restaurants as well, but he'll be in the front. You know, it's just classic 68-year-old Greek guy that came here with nothing and, you know, just try to provide for his family, and he's out taking our, you know, homemade onion rings to his friends out there and just making sure everyone's super happy, and that's why they keep coming back, you know, to see my mom, you know, hostessing in the front of the weekends, and my dad comes by, and so I love that. Greg, give us a little of your background. Give us you know, how you got into this amazing industry.
All right, so grew up in Raleigh. I mean, not far from where Ryan was.
Now, you guys knew each other in Raleigh?
We
didn't.
Okay.
Ironically enough, I don't know how we didn't. I'm sure we had.
You went to the rich kid school, and I went to the normal people school.
Whatever. So grew up there. My family had a farm, had a 1,700-acre farm.
Okay.
Spent a lot of time there through parts of elementary and middle. I lived there. My grandma had a catering company. She catered like to the migrant workers and farmers and stuff like that. My grandfather was in tobacco, so she would get up biscuits, you know, bacon, grits, whatever, and deliver it to, you know, the migrant workers and the farmers and that stuff. And then did a lot of catering, weddings, parties, whatever. Very, very small town, Hart County.
Yeah.
And so I was always kind of hands-on in the kitchen. You know, loved it. It just was part of life. And picking beans, shelling pecans, shucking corn, just anything, canning. It was just how life was, or how I perceived life was. And then as soon as I got old enough to hit the industry, 14, pulled a work permit, and it was like, this seems fun. You know, it's fast-paced. It's you know, whatever. So I jumped into the catering side with Sisters Catering in Raleigh, which is a real high-end catering company. So I got the front of the house piece. I would go in the morning, work 6, 7 in the morning till 2 or 3 in the afternoon, then change into the penguin outfit, and then I would serve from 5, 6 at night till 2 o'clock in the morning, and then make a ton of money.
How old?
It was like 15, 16.
That's strong hours.
It was back then and didn't.
It's the Energizer Bunny, man.
Well, it wasn't technically like legal, but as long as I wasn't doing anything bad, it was fine. And same thing with Applebee's. I worked with Applebee's, and I was prepping at the age of 14, 15.
Which Applebee's in Raleigh?
Six Forks and Wake Forest Road.
Dude, you might have.
Yeah.
I might have been in there with Pops, dude.
Yeah.
That's wild.
But I mean, I wasn't old enough to technically use a knife, but I'd been doing it forever. So I mean, I was back and said, hey, you guys need some help? You're short. I don't mind. I can cut zucchini. I can do that. And so they're like, all right, this guy's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then I fell in love with it. It was just a different pace. It was a different animal. I couldn't sit at a desk. I knew that. I'm ADHD from A to Z. I mean, I can't do it. So I fell in love with the industry. I ended up going to college in Miami. Thankfully, I had a loving family as well that was willing to pull me out. And I was like, look, it's too much. I can't do Miami life. It's just way too much. So came out, moved back home. I started working for a company, Nofo, at the Pig, which is at 5 Points in Raleigh. Okay. We're going to open one in Charlotte. And it was about the time that I was eligible to go back to Johnson & Wales because Charlotte opened for freshmen only. So I had to wait till I could qualify to get back in on the third trimester. And moved here, and no place to live, sleeping on buddies' couches. But I knew it was like I need to be there. And then started school. Ended up being part of the team that opened Ratcliffe on the Green, which is the first, well, not the first, but I guess the most renowned sustainable local restaurant in the city to kind of put that whole slow food movement on the map.
What year is this?
2007. I was lucky enough to get recognized by USA Today and Mother Nature Network as one of the top chefs under the age of 40 in the country.
Wow.
For the sustainable movement. Sean Brock was in there. It was me and Sean Brock. We were the two Johnson & Wales graduates, were me and Sean Brock.
Okay.
You say Sean Brock?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sean's from the Charleston, right?
Yeah, so me and him were the two, it was in the Johnson & Wales Flyer. Me and him were the only two graduates that got mentioned in the top 40 under the age of 40.
It's like one of those things you have to see it to believe it, let's be honest.
I got it approved.
I never heard of Sean Brock until I got
it framed.
Yeah, I bet.
I had Chef Wheeler on, Daniel Wheeler.
He's next door.
Yeah, so
great cat, man.
I did a podcast with him in our first season, and he was telling me about Charleston. And
he worked for Sean for nothing, for free, forever.
He told me, he's like, man,
14, 15 hours a day.
I took a beating working for him, but he's like, I learned so much, and
I can only imagine.
Yeah. So continue. Yeah, go ahead.
So I mean that Mark Hibbs is the chef there, and he really introduced me to Charlotte. I mean, helped put my name on the map.
Nice.
The restaurant did a lot of great things. And I'm forever thankful. I mean, without that, I don't know where I'd be right now. But he introduced me to everybody. And I've kind of spun off on that career, and going back to like knowing your professors, knowing your friends.
Yeah.
Pretty much most of the movers and shakers now in Charlotte, we were all buddies, degenerates back in college. I mean, we all ran together, hung out together. Now it's like, hey man, we call them up, yo bro, I need this, whatever. And it's really cool to have that tight knit community of just kids that kicked it around back in the day.
Yeah.
After Ratcliffe, I did a stint at Southmen's retirement community with Chris Reed and my buddy Travis Fisher. She got hired. It's a Southminster is a CCRC, Continued Care Retirement Community.
Okay.
And they wanted it. Sedesco, Morrison, Compass Group, they were all bidding on the contract because it housed like 400 and some people.
Wow.
And they could come and go as they wanted. They're big movers and shakers in the community. But they didn't want processed, canned, frozen. The director of operations wanted to bring a team in that could do fresh, in-season, local, when possible. So Chris got the job, and then she called me. She's like, well, I need you. And I was like, well, I need him. I was like, well, so they agreed to hire all of us. We're like, okay, let's do this. So it took us almost 5 years, but we succeeded in beating out Morrison, Compass, Sedesco, and implementing a program that was fresh, that was in season, that was local. We partnered with South Mech and grew a huge greenhouse, huge garden, had a huge garden on site as well, where the residents would work it, be able to like play in the dirt. We had big raised beds, so if they had issues with mobility, they could still work the gardens, which is huge. I mean,
what did you learn from that? Because I mean, going from what was a restaurant.
I think I learned a lot. I think that was probably what instilled like the patience and the like hospitality the most into me is you got 400 grandparents. And they have lots of allergies and restrictions because of medications, and you kind of learn that they're not being nitpicky or whatever. It's like, well, I can't have grapefruit because of my blood pressure medicine, or I can't, or my Crohn's is acting up real bad, or this, that, and the other. So, and you want to take care of them because they're like your grandparents. I mean, they ask about you every day. How's your family? How's this? You know, and you see the same people. So, and then I kind of took from that, you know, that this is like your house. I mean, you spend more time here than you do at your physical address. So it's like people that come in here, you should treat them the same as the people that come into your house. It's just like they come here to have a good time. They don't come here to have a bad time. So you want to make sure they're having a great time. They're taken care of to the nines, and then they come back. And then you know them by name. They know you by name. They see you on the street. They're like, hey, chef. I'm like, hey, dude, what's up? You know. So
you know, patience, empathy towards
your guests, because you never know. They might be having a horrible day, and and you just that little bit extra you give could turn their whole day around, and you know, their whole week, their whole month. You don't know.
What years was that?
Southmen, like 2011, 12.
That kind of put you ahead of the curve on dealing with restrictions.
I was like 23. I mean, but it was interesting walking into a place that was about 20 years old at that point, and the cooks there have been opening cans and boxes and forever, for 15 to 20 years.
Which I'm sure is kind of the norm for that type of,
for that setting.
Exactly.
But if you saw the place now, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous. But
I love that.
But going in and like, hey man, I know Fred, I know you've been doing this for 20 years this way. I was like, but today, man, we're gonna cut a zucchini, you know, or these are golden beets. These are beets. And they're like, no, beets are red. I'm like, well, these are golden beets. So we're gonna, you know, we grew them down.
It's kind of exemplary of like the entire industry, though, right? Like so.
But then those guys learned how to cook, and then those guys could then take that home to their families and cook for their families, and not know that the only way you have the vegetables is out of a can, or it's like, so it was a big learning experience for me of how to manage, especially older people being a younger chef. Like these guys are 20 years older than I am, and I'm like, hey man, I'm sorry, you gotta do what I'm telling you what to do. And they're like, who are you? You know how to cook? And I'm like, maybe, I don't know, but this is what I'm here for. So it was great. And so once we accomplished that, I went to Cantina 1511, and then I ended up taking the corporate executive chef role for Quantum Development Food Group.
What was that like?
A lot of work. I mean, it was always running from here to there to there to here, checking on multiple restaurants, make sure everything was the same between each one of them.
How many restaurants?
It was just 3. And that was, it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. And then after that, it started opening, did a couple other spots, and then I heard about this, and I was like, well, I'm comfy where I'm at. And they walked in where I was at and threw a contract on the table, and they're like, what about now? I was like, I don't know. I was like, we'll see.
How about that?
Yeah, and the place I was at the time didn't really like that they came in and pitched me a job. So we opened this up, and this has been great.
So the Crunkleton opened when?
I want to say it was December 2019.
Of 2019.
Was it January of 2019?
It was December of 2018.
Heard.
Because we're going on year 3 this December.
Okay, so it's been there a few years. Anything, you know, is this different than what you've done? Is this, you know, how did this experience, you know, launching this new
opening
restaurant?
This versus opening some other stuff that the restaurants I've opened in the past have had prior units. So there was a little more infrastructure. There was, you know, a little more stuff to go on.
Gotcha.
With this, I mean, I'd never cooked on a 9-foot wood-fired hearth. I mean, I've camped a million times. I've cooked on fire a million times. I've grilled out a million times.
Yeah.
That's not a big deal, but I mean, to be on stage in front of people, you know, it was a big deal.
The first time that, you know, it had been done in Charlotte too.
Yeah, nobody done it. And so when we did decide to do food here, we initially thought it wasn't going to be it was going to be a part of the scene, but it was going to be, you know, what, 20-30% of sales.
And you have to imagine, you know, the original up in Chapel Hill opened in 2008.
Okay.
it's won all these accolades, best bourbon bar. Gary kind of rose to nationwide fame as a cocktail bartender. He basically brought craft cocktails and classic cocktails to North Carolina. I mean, the guy had to, most people don't know this about Gary, but he had to code Luxardo. He had to code Chartreuse, Fernet, like all of these, amaros and things that, we use in our day in, day out,
day-to-day operations.
Cocktail, making world. They didn't exist in North Carolina at the time. He's coded, I would humbly, he won't tell you the total amount, but I bet it's anywhere from 60 to 70% of the special orders that you can get in North Carolina. Gary coded himself because he wanted them for his bar, and he helped other bars, kind of get started. He did a bunch of consulting, some of it for free, for North Carolina bar owners, and his impact is absolutely, it's kind of really unfathomable for North Carolina.
Wow.
So being so bar focused, and there's no food whatsoever in Chapel Hill, I doubt that when they opened this place, they thought that anyone was really going to care about our food. But knowing that, Gary's mentality is just to keep trying and keep being great at whatever it is, he'd never done food before, but he wanted it to be special.
Yeah.
And so doing the hearth, and I think everyone and their mother saw that Francis Malmont episode of Chef's Table. I think I've seen it like 20 times. It's incredible.
I watched it last week.
Yeah, and so I watched it like 2 weeks ago. It's so good. Kind of seeing like this, art of cooking with fire, just really inspired tons of chefs throughout the world. But finally, it was going to come to Charlotte, the style of hearth cooking, and I can't imagine that they thought that, again, like it was going to overshadow all the work that he had done. So we really didn't plan on doing a ton of food. I mean, our kitchen is probably, it's probably like a quarter of the size that it should be given the amount of volume. And, they really, when we hit the ground running. I mean, I'm pretty sure you lit the fire for the first time.
We lit the fire. We opened the doors. We lit the fire, and then opened the doors. And it was like, all right, guys, let's go.
Let's figure it out.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
That's so like restaurant business too, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, literally, the guy's on a ladder, and I'm like, man, we opened the doors in 3 minutes. Are you almost done? He's like, I'm almost done, man. I'm like, well, hurry up. Like, I gotta light this fire.
I'll never forget the first day at Zeppelin. We got the liquor license. We got the call that morning at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And it was like, let's go. And so I remember one of the owners, Jonathan, drove back from Charlotte. He had spent the night in a hotel to get it. Yeah. Drove back from Charlotte. We slapped it up on the wall. Went to ABC. They already had our order ready to rock. When we got back, I want to say it was like 7:30, and we had a train of staff members from the front where the car was all the way to the bar, just passing cases. We threw it up all on the wall, and I want to say it was like a game of inches, probably 5 or 10 minutes before people walked through the door, and then we were just sitting there like
swans.
Yeah, this has always been here. It didn't just show up 5 minutes ago,
That's the best bar. It's like, yeah, you know what? We've been ready. We're good to go.
What plate's this going on, chef? I don't know. Pick one.
Yeah, pick one.
I don't know. Pick one. It's like we'll plate it up 5 different ways throughout the night. Whatever one we like, we'll just stick with that one.
I love that.
It's cool. It's like whoever has the best plate up, we'll run with that.
Well, thankfully I think the experience, and I didn't know that about the retirement community, but the experience of taking something that was so set in its ways and then kind of getting it to this new place, was very much indicative of opening any restaurant. You know what I mean? It's, I talk about, slow, gentle pressure. You can't fix everything immediately. You couldn't just go in there and completely remodel the kitchen.
I tried to really get it done.
I learned that lesson.
And I learned it real quick that these guys weren't going to budge. All right,
you have muscle memory,
work.
and you have to slowly implement. Okay, I'm going to teach you this technique today, and then eventually, thinking long term, you'll get to where you want to go. For us here, I wasn't on full time, so I remember one of my bar shifts. I came in and one of the girls was pre-peeling lemons. And I was like, what are you doing? She's like, we're so busy. This is prep. I'm like, prep? Peeling? No. We're going to garnish to order. What do you mean we can't do that? And I'm like, we're going to do it. It's going to be just fine. And I remember at the end of the shift, she's like, oh my God, I didn't know how you knew that we were going to be okay. I'm like, just trust me, we're not pre-peeling lemon peels. They're going to be dry in an hour. There's no point. You need the oil for them to be worthwhile. But, but it was just like kind of like attacking like one thing after the next. And then slowly, by summertime, we had really kind of caught our swing. We finally found some really great talent. I mean, if there's something that anybody watching this needs to understand, is that your staff and your human capital is almost infinitely more important than the capital that you 100%. Even use to start up the business. If you don't have the right managers, you don't have the right people executing, then the whole cogwheel kind of falls apart. And so we had finally lucked into some really great talent, and me and Hannah kind of started really kind of finding our vibe, and we just started crushing in the fall, crushed through like this incredible winter, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
The restaurants you love, the food you crave, and the people that make it all happen. We tell their stories on the Paper Trails podcast with Albemarle Paper Supply.